just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show and prove.
Good afternoon and welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Isabella Adediji. Well, it's raining birthdays here on Rubbin Minds. A happy birthday to the host, Ebuka Obi Uchendu. And of course, in 2 days' time, on Tuesday, happy birthday in advance to the senior producer, Otumba Shehu Oluyemi. We pray that this new year will be full of God's blessings. Now, a lot has been happening over the past week. We have defections, of course, the ongoing conversation between the federal government and organized labor on the matter of the minimum wage. And we all shared in the horror looking at the ongoing rescue efforts at the secondary school that collapsed in Jos. Of course, there's still a lot of questions being asked by Nigerians as they continue to queue at petrol stations that, wait a minute, we've removed subsidy on fuel, on petroleum products. Why are we still seeing these queues linger? A lot to go through today on the show. Joining me is a media consultant and social entrepreneur, Funke Treasure Anike Ade. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you very much, Isabella. Good to be here.
We're glad to have you. And we also have policy development and research experts in the person of Israel Fawale. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here again.
Okay, thank you for honoring our invitation. Now, when we think about Nigerian politics, a lot of people feel that a lot of the politicians move from party to party at their whim for personal interest. In other climes, you have ideologies that mark a party, and maybe we don't see as much cross-carpeting movement. So what do you make of former Senate President Anyim Pius Anyim, who has defected from the People's Democratic Party, that's PDP, to the ruling party, All Progressives Congress? Do you believe these kind of defections are based on ideologies or maybe personal interest? Because we can cite a number of politicians that have been in both parties, and is this something we should continue to expect? I'll start with you, Funke.
Well, let's backtrack a little. You see that this was not the case in the past. I mean, our political ancestors were never doing this. They stuck to one party. I talk about NCNC back in the days, Action Group and all of those things. They did what is known as coalitions, not outrightly leave their parties to another party. And I think it's a reflection of military's incursion into democratic governance, where you had former President Ibrahim Babangida being behind the setting up of NRC and SDP, and you see that what we have today continually evolved from these two parties. So you see, you've talked about ideologies. I've never seen where a conservative moved from to Labour, or Labour to Conservative in the UK, or a Democrat, an elected officer in the Democrats to the Republicans in the US, which is where we borrowed our presidential system of government. So you see that this is a Nigerian thing. It just tells you that there are no ideological differences in the parties, the main parties that we have today. We hope that maybe one day they'll all sit down and say, this defines PDP, this defines APC and the other parties, so that they stay in one place and grow there and swim or sink with it, as we see, particularly in the UK. I mean, they just had their elections, and the party that lost knew that, okay, we didn't do too well. You heard the Prime Minister, he didn't move to the other party. He just agreed and apologized to the nation. But here, I do not want to say maybe is where Bele face is, but we see that people just move based on, my friend is there now, so let me just go there and,
Israel, do you agree that it's politics of interest as opposed to politics of ideology?
Yeah, of course. I mean, she rightly said everything that as it pertains to that question. And of course, you could, years ago in the classic novel written by George Orwell, animal farm, yeah. And, all animals are equal, some are more equal than the other. So that happens when there is this person in government. Others also want to have government privileges. So because there are no ideologies, you see them, moving, to escape, EFCC, scrutiny and all of those things. So, I mean, lack of ideologies is obviously the primary issue where you see, politicians in Nigeria who are supposed to, form ideologies that actually makes our developmental processes. That is why they cross the carpet. So I mean,
you are saying it's to avoid the gaze of EFCC. Is it also to maybe remain relevant, or is it a case of, this party seems to be the one that everybody is supporting, so I better be on the winning team?
So for me, the last administration during the Muhammadu Buhari's tenure, you would see, once they will even tell you in the media, come to our party, then your punishments would be, will be lower. So for me, I think it is just a means for them to actually evade justice. Yeah, so that
is such a sorry thing to, take out of this, because accountability is such that if you erred, you should take the full, punishment for whatever error or whatever it is that you did wrong. You cannot be milking the people and stealing from the people and think that if you ported to another party, a ruling party, then your sins will be forgiven. It just tells you that we're not there yet, and accountability should be a thing that we prioritize, in Nigeria. It's a sad commentary for people to think that if I ported or if I moved across capital, to use the right word, to another party, then there's a cloak on me and you can't touch this.
Now, speaking about accountability, it begs the question of people being held accountable, government agencies being held accountable, developers, the people who are issuing these permits, because over and over we see these buildings collapse, the buildings, and it was so horrific seeing, secondary school students who were still in session, speaking about the Saint Academy School building in Jos, Plateau State. And this occurred on Friday. And the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Ahmed Dangiwa, is saying that it's totally unacceptable. Whoever is responsible will feel the full weight of the law. But do you see any measures being taken? Because it's like every month there's one building collapse or the other. It's not just in Jos, it's in Lagos, it's in different parts of the country. And surely there are signs, there are these building distress where you begin to see cracks. Really, who should be facing the music and who should we be holding accountable? I'll start with you, Israel.
Okay, thank you so much. It is really unfortunate that, when we have issues like this, in Nigeria, our governments are more reactionary rather than being proactive. Yeah, when you want to build, you want to have a building. Yeah, there are due processes for you to go into. Yeah, so what happens to when buildings are going in, when the constructions are going on? Enforcement of relevant policies that have been in place to mitigate or prevent issues like this. In the case where the government are not proactive, we continue to have issues like this, and the only thing we'll have are excuses, bunch of excuses and reactionary comments like, we are sorry, we are sad, and which is really unfortunate that we lost 21 young pupils, in that school. So I would really say that, as much as the government really needs to be more proactive rather than being reactionary, also people living in the immediate environment have a role to play, and that boils down to accountability. It is not only the role of the government, but also the role of people who are living primarily in in such environment. A building wouldn't just collapse without showing some signs. So there must have been a bit of laxity. I'm sorry to say, but then there probably must have been a bit of laxity. People who are around, the cracks, just like Riley said, there must have been cracks, there must have been signs. So what were the measures that have been put in place when these things are? So I think that we really need to reorientate ourselves on, when you see this, how do you, react to it and all of those things. So we need to first also, as people within the community, start taking serious accountability steps so that, issues like this, accidents like this can be prevented.
Okay, Funke, I'd like to take this question from this angle, because you mentioned, what's obtainable in other climes. And in situations like this, usually the agency or the minister whose portfolio this falls under takes that sense of responsibility and says, look, it happened under my watch. I'm sorry, I'm not good enough. And they step down. Is that something we should expect? Is that the kind of accountability that when something goes wrong, let the person facing the music be the person at the top? In this case, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development?
Well, I don't think the minister should step down. I think well, he has made a statement, which is good. He's empathizing with what has happened. I mean, to be honest, it's a tragic development, but really, it can't take away the job of the governor. It's in the place of the governor to be accountable to the tragedy in his state. Having said that, this should be a wake-up call to other governors to look at the structural defects of buildings, not just in the state capitals, but in other, beyond the state capitals where they are. A friend was telling me about the former governor of Osun State, Governor Aregbesola back then, who took a proactive step. You were talking about reactionary and, reactions and responses. It took a, proactive step by checking buildings in the state capital, Osogbo, then to see that the buildings were all right. You also talked about agencies when you were framing the question. So I'm wondering, town planners and building associations and all these people, where are they? Do you mean that they pass by these roads and streets and then they see structures with defects and they just keep mum? Which reminds me of, again, what former governor of Kaduna State did when he was at the FCT, in charge of the FCT, how he was pulling down, structures at that time, not just because they were obstructing, they were not, adhering to the master plan, but some of them were not also, good structures. So governors should not wait till this kind of thing happens. I mean, look at Plateau State. It's not a place where we associate with building collapses like Lagos. Right. But look, it has happened and we've lost children. The thing is, what is the value of a Nigerian life? What will happen such that state governors will rise in unison to say, this must not happen again? We're not there yet.
A lot of people need to take responsibility, and perhaps maybe some heads need to roll.
It should. If
it's not the minister, if it's not the governor, then what about the heads of these agencies? It's not enough to have these statements, because what happens when the next building collapses? Okay, let's move to the appointments. There have been a lot of appointments over the past week. We had new leadership for PENCOM, we had for NAUDA, we had for CCT. I mean, I could go on and on, NHSA. When you see these appointments, and this is not the first time we're going to see a slurry of appointments by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Does this give you some kind of renewed hope? Does this instill some kind of confidence that once we have round pegs in round holes, then a huge part of the problem is solved? Or do you feel that maybe some of these appointments are a way to maybe pat people on the back and say, here's a reward for maybe good service over time? Funke?
Well, I know that every leader would want a team. Making appointments is one of those things. When you take over, you want your own people there so that they can give impetus to your vision. And after the appointments, we expect performance, which is what we're all expecting, whether you're using the old team or you're constituting your own team. What we need in Nigeria right now is performance. So if anybody is getting appointed to whichever agency or to become new minister in a new ministry and all of these appointments, what we want is performance. And I believe what the person who is making this appointment wants also are people who can translate his vision into measurable actions, and we can see results and develop as a nation. Outside that, change brings newness, change brings freshness, change brings, creates an atmosphere of let's do this, let's do this. It brings enthusiasm. And I hope that these people who've been appointed to these agencies will inject fresh ideas, will bring in freshness and newness. And at the end of the, administrations in these various agencies will be able to say, oh, this person contributed this to the development of Nigeria. That's what matters to me.
Israel, do you share in Funke's hope that...
Yeah, sure. I totally agree. Some days ago, Tony Onimelu was saying that he's not talented, but he brings people who are talented around him to be able to achieve the results he has today. So it is not about the appointment. I want to believe that Mr. President, before appointing these people, have checked their portfolio and they are worthy and suiting to that portfolio to be able to perform. So my advice is just, as a country, I mean, like I said the other time I was here, I was saying that you have no business in leadership or policy if you're not thinking development. So when you get there, it is not about you being there or carrying the title or being a positional leader. It's about you also going to look for the best hands that you can work with, understanding what has been happening, having a retrospective study, and also looking at, oh yes, and that is where, research comes in. It's very important. You must do research. You must take your time when you get to the office to understand what is the current situation of things. Where are we coming from? Then what is the renewed hope agenda? Then, merging all of these things, because knowledge drives action. If you don't have data about what has been happening, what's currently the state of things, and the future innovation we have, I mean, you most likely might fail. So it is very important that you bring first, you are knowledgeable about what you want to do, you take your time to do research, and you bring the best hand around you, to work with you. Then we'll be able to achieve beautiful results, and it will end up giving us beautiful democratic outcomes.
And speaking of renewed hope, I think something that marked this administration as such a bold and audacious step was the removal of subsidy on petroleum products. And yet we see that the price keeps going up. And just recently, it's been, a lot of chaos at the petrol stations. Queues have returned. And I don't know if you also echo the same sentiment by the National Association of Nigerian Students, that's NANS, who are saying that this removal of subsidy has led us into a crisis and they're not seeing the benefits, the promised benefits. Do you agree? Do you echo this same sentiment, Israel? Oh,
yes. I mean, it is visible to the blind and it is audible to the deaf that, Mr. President's coming and hitting the ground running was with the removal of fuel subsidy without a serious study, feasibility study. Oh, what is the situation of things? I mean, somebody who is just resuming office, whether you have been in the safe house for 3 months or 2 months, I mean, that is not enough for you to carry out, to have enough data to help you make informed decisions. Knowledge drives action. And that would make me start asking Mr. President, what made you? We should even be asking Mr. President, or if you think you mean well for us, what made you make this type of policy on your first day, in office? It is a very unfortunate policy, and I must say. And I feel that it is a major thing that has driven us into this problem, this hunger, this hardship, that we are in. Yeah, I totally agree with what the Nigerian students have said. And they are also echoing the voice of every Nigerian. We are all in pains. We are all, feeling the pain of the hardship. We are feeling the pain of, the queues at the filling station. It has not changed anything. Nothing has changed. No newness, no, how do I put it? Nothing really specifically has changed. So it is really sad and unfortunate that we have that to start. And of course, we don't know for how long, the effect of the removal of subsidy, without proper policies in place. We don't know how long the cascade, of the effects would cascade. So yeah, I totally agree with what the students have said.
What about you, Funke? Do Nigerians need to just exercise a bit more patience to see maybe these promised benefits of this subsidy removal, or do you also echo the same sentiment?
Yes, I do. I mean, I do not blame Nance, for making that statement. It's been quite difficult for households and families to survive in the last 1 year. And I am saying this with caution also, knowing that I mean, I do not expect this administration to do in 1 year what has gone wrong for like 8-10 years. And so wanting to right the wrongs of the past and wanting to put us on the right policy a pathway to becoming healthy again as a nation, both economically and otherwise, is good. But I think what this administration needs to do more is to find ways to explain what's going on. Don't just expect us to understand what you're doing. I mean, this is beyond regular economics, you know. So you need to get platforms to continually explain to Nigerians what you're doing and for how long we have to endure this hardship and where we're going. You floated the Naira, and then afterwards, what do we begin to expect? When do we get respite? Because truly, there is hunger in the land. People are hungry. The prices of things have not just doubled or tripled, they've quadrupled in many places. So it is difficult. Rent is something else now. And so you do not see the commensurate increase in the take home of people. So people are groaning, and it's not as if the fuel is, we're happy with it. So please explain more. We understand that we have to, sacrifice for our nation, but you see, in the bid to sacrifice, you don't want us to die, right?
Yeah. and I think maybe that's why this issue of the minimum wage is so important now, because the purchasing power of 30,000 this year is not the same as 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And organized labor is still standing on 250,000, which has come down from about 600 and something thousand. But it seems to be there's this impasse, like no headway is being made. Israel, what are your thoughts on this minimum wage? Is that the solution to give people more money, or maybe to start looking at how to combat inflation, which I would say the removal of fuel subsidy has really contributed to the huge increase in the price of food and, like you said, rent and, all sorts of basic amenities?
So for me, it's a very slippery slope. When you talk about implementation of the new minimum wage, then what amount would actually be enough? I mean, look at what happened, for example, in Uganda. Some years ago, they said they were in the same crisis and they just increased minimum wage, and they had serious inflation problem. So I would say that yes, it is very, very important. This is what I feel the president should have done first, honestly speaking, before removing the fuel subsidy. Let us review our minimum wage. Let us check what, and that is why, see, when you come and you don't have data, you don't make enough researches for you to have enough knowledge to drive your decisions, the policy you are making, you are bound to actually have this kind of policy somersault that you're having, because I'll call it a policy somersault. So I feel that, yes, why this conversation is going, I feel it is when you are putting the, how do you say this in Yoruba?
The cart before the horse?
Yes,
or the
this
horse
should have
before?
come first, before first subsidy removal, because I mean, before this time there has been serious inflation. You see, the Naira to dollar exchange has been on the high rise, and people are really grounding and all of those things. So ignoring all of those things and removing first subsidy was a no-no. This conversation should have been held years back or months back before this is happening. So we hope, something good will come out of it. But even at that, even when you increase the earning power, the buying power is as high as. So how to really balance
What about, like in 30 seconds or less, I'd like you to just weigh in on that, Funke.
Well, I think Labour is conflating minimum wage with monthly salary. Because I don't understand how you will make 250,000 naira the minimum wage. You mean you're expecting people in the lower cadre to earn that? So what will mid-income people earn, and what will people higher than that earn? For those of us in the private sector who have employees, are you telling me that as a social entrepreneur, the lowest I should give a staff is 250K? That's minimum wage. That's not the monthly salary. So this is where am I going to get that? Where will the private sector get that? So labor needs to, and just as he said, you're courting inflation. it's just not going to work. So let us stop conflating monthly salary with minimum wage. Minimum wage this is the minimum, and you can have all kinds of allowances on top of it that will make up your monthly salary. I think that's where Labour is getting it wrongly.
Thank you very much, Funke Treasurer Anike Ade, and thank you, Israel Fowley, for your contributions on Rubbin Minds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll now take a break on Rubbin Minds. Don't go anywhere.
Really wanna get with you. Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show up.
Welcome back to Rubbin Minds. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, in her essay, said, "We have a generation of young people on social media so terrified of having the wrong opinions that they have robbed themselves of the opportunity to think and to learn and to grow. The assumption of good faith is dead." She goes on to further say, "What matters is not goodness, but the appearance of goodness. We are no longer human beings. We are now angels, jostling to out-angel one another. God help us. It is obscene." Now, this is a great way to just frame our conversation this afternoon on cancel culture. Are people so afraid to make mistakes, to say the wrong things, to really air what they feel out of fear of being cancelled? Are people afraid to show what their real choice is, whether it's in an actor or a political leader or an ideology, out of fear of being totally cancelled? Is cancel culture as real as we make it to seem, or is it being over exaggerated? Can people actually cancel individuals? To discuss cancel culture and if it's really taking over our humanity, I have with me a media editor and actor, Osas Okonyo. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for honoring our invitation. I'm also joined by Michael Shonariwo, a media personality. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And virtually, we're being joined by an essayist and culture critic, Edwin Okolo. Edwin, welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you very much.
So let's get right into cancel culture. I'll start with you, Osas, and that's because you work in the media space. Is cancel culture taking over our humanity? Is cancel culture as big as Chimamanda has made it seem to say, God help us, it's obscene. Like people can't be themselves anymore because we're all afraid, we're all tippy-toeing on the social media space.
Yeah, I mean, so I wouldn't say it's so much of cancel culture as it is of us just wanting to look good online and look great. I have a good appearance, so to speak, because when it comes to cancel culture, especially in this part of the world, there's not a lot really going on. I think that we speak more of cancel culture than people are actually cancelled, to be honest, especially because as Nigerians, we are more of communists than anything. You know, nobody wants to actually fully cancel anybody because it's like you're taking their source of livelihood, or, you know, you don't want people to fall off wherever it is that they are. So at the end of the day, cancel culture is not as big of a problem as we try to make it seem. Although there are, you know, cases where people are bullied online for but cancel culture in that, you know, someone says something and then after that, that's the end of their, not so much really.
Okay, I'll move to you, Michael. When I think about cancel culture, at least in recent times, say last year, Naira Marley easily comes to mind because we saw clips of his late artist being bullied, and there was this whole thing of, oh, it's Naira Marley's fault, that's the cause of his death, and people came out in their numbers to unfollow. Like you could actually see social media numbers dropping. You could actually see people taking a stand, people saying like they're all out against Malians, cancelling Malians, and perhaps even existing Malians not necessarily wanting to associate so strongly. I mean, I remember Zinoleski trying to sort of get his way, out of the fray. Like, oh, if you guys are going to cancel Naira Marley, please don't cancel me. I still have music to make, do you see Naira Marley being cancelled, or was it just a temporary pointing of hands, and Nigerians have sort of gotten back to, look, let's give him some slack, this has been inconclusive from the autopsy?
Well, I think at times Nigerians, we like to follow trends. Whatever trend that might be, whether positive or negative, we at times like to follow trends. And something like Naira Marley's case now, I feel it was the court of public opinion. Because, again, from the facts that were given, we weren't given all the full details, but the fact that were given was that Naira Marley and his associates were involved. So with something like that that led to somebody's death now, you obviously are not going to support that person. But at the same time, we didn't have all the full facts and figures now to allow us to really understand what was going on. But moving forward now, you have the thing of short-term memory some people may have, whereby now it goes back to regular programming, whereby his loyal fans will continue being his loyal fans. People that were probably in between, they are making the decision whether they want to continue listening to his music or they're going to continue standing against him. So I think it's a case now that in the end, he built a strong platform that he'll have his core audience, but for the majority of people now, they've probably let him go.
Okay, I'll move to you, Edwin. I would like you to also weigh in on that. And I want you to also look at this question from what Usa said about bullying. Like, is there a line between people being bullied or people being cancelled? Now, in the case of Mohbad and his death, we saw people coming out to take a stand against Naira Marley. Now, if you juxtapose that with sort of the online bullying that Toyin Abraham has been receiving for her choice of political candidate, in this case, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the elections, is that cancellation or is that more of bullying?
So it's a very complex situation. For the example of Mohbad and Naira Marley, somebody died and people felt compelled to respond to that death, especially because they felt like the person who died was oppressed. And so most of the response was in response to that. In the case of Toyin Abraham, it's a lot different because she exercised her public right to support a certain candidate, and people have responded
Edwin, we'll come back to you. Appears we lost you. I'll move to you, Osas. In your own experience in the media, when this cancellation or bullying takes place, how long does it last for? Have you seen cases of people being totally cancelled, that they can't sort of make a comeback in their careers, or is it something that's just temporal?
So I would say that for the most part, the only very strong cancelling that I've seen so far would be the case of Naira Marley, where it's like, we don't want to hear anything from you, we don't want to play your music, we don't want you to release any new. But generally, Nigerians we have very, short-term, it's like once you do another nice thing, and I think that he even tried that because, it's Nigerians, giveaway and, and everyone is back to status quo. But generally, Nigerians move on very fast. Once the new trend comes on, everyone has moved on from whatever it is and just moved on to the next thing. That's literally how, I think it's the time that we're in right now. It's the media, it's fast-paced, everything is happening at the same time. So nobody really has time to focus on one person and whatever it is that they're doing, except in very serious cases like the one that we have with Naira Marley, where it actually involved someone's unfortunate death, right? So yeah.
Michael, you mentioned about people wanting to jump on trends and do things based on what is reigning or what the bandwagon is doing. Is it more about that, being with the cool kid, doing what is in, or is it more about fear? Like, if I really express how I feel, I'm going to be bullied, I'm going to be cancelled, I'm not going to be seen as being cool or it. So where is it stemming from? Is it more of a need to be accepted or more of fear that I can't really be myself and say my mind?
Well, what I've noticed in Nigeria is that the people that are not afraid to go against the trends or not afraid of public opinions are the people that usually thrive the most. So, for example, a lot of the social influencers we have today now, you see them creating a lot of new, unique content that's not usually the popular thing in Nigeria, but they're creating a unique content that makes them stand out. And because of that, they're able to have a lot of success from that if they're consistent at it. So you have a lot of people who, yes, the majority of Nigerians, they like to follow trends or the popular opinions. But the people that stand out now are the people that go against the popular opinion and come up with their own collective reasoning. For example, now we have a podcast now called Menizens Podcast. That was a podcast for men to express themselves. And at first, when we started the podcast, we got a lot of backlash at first because it was men speaking on mics, talking about topics about women. However, as we were consistent at it now, people started hearing the unique takes of it, and that's what gave it a lot of success. So I feel like if you're somebody that's an influencer, media personality in Nigeria, if you're able to at least be consistent in your craft and go against the trends, then you'll have a lot of success doing so.
Okay. Edwin, are you still there? Okay, we'll continue, Osas, and this time I want to look at the actual effect it has. So beyond the reduction of social media numbers, do you feel that these people are influencing a generation not to say their mind? Do you feel that, for example, Toyin Abraham in this case saying, look, I supported this president, I continue to stand on the mandate, and the kind of backlash she's receiving is going to affect other people in the future rather, not to share so boldly or share so openly who they truly support, or maybe even come up and say they support a certain person just so that they are received properly online or received warmly?
I mean, I would say that there's definitely, going to be a bit of that hesitation going forward, seeing how this one has been, handled. But in Toyin's case, I think it's very tricky, in that she wasn't the only one who, supported this candidate. She wasn't the only one who came out to say, oh, this person is who I'm going with and all of that. But there seems to be a lot. And I think that it just also speaks to what he said about, people following trends. It's like everyone decided that we're going to focus on this person. And then a lot of people also just, went ahead. So, yeah, there would be that hesitation, going forward. Like, do I want to, do this? But then again, on the flip side of it, on the other side of it, there's also people who would just be like, if I just do the right thing, right? I mean, no one is going to necessarily come for you. Now, the tricky part of that one is what exactly is the right thing, because we cannot exactly say she did anything wrong, right? She just
exercised her right.
So it's just, at the end of the day, it's more of people just deciding what is more important to them. I'm going to say whatever it is I'm going to say, and whatever is going to come after it is fine. People can argue that if you come online and say something, I can also come online and say, whatever it is that I want to say, as long as I'm not directly poking you or, so at the end of the day, it's free game.
Free game.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, it's interesting you mentioned your podcast, because I start thinking about people who have been cancelled, and the reaction by people is don't purchase their music, don't watch their movies, don't buy their merchandise. And when you started your podcast, did you find people cancelling you? Did you see reduction of numbers? Did you see people boycotting your podcast completely, or particular guests that might have expressed opinions that were not mainstream and felt that they should be cancelled?
If anything, it gave us a lot of success because it was something that wasn't seen in the public norm in Nigeria. So before the podcast, we do a lot of content, TikToks, as you like to say. And a lot of the TikTok stem from talking about public opinions of what men go through in society, speaking about women, but not in a negative light in terms of speaking of things from our perspective. So those videos, of course, trended. They did millions of views, which now led to the podcast. So from the podcast, when those segments would go out, they would trend. And of course, you'd have the backlash at first from some women, but you had a lot of women who supported us. And then you had even more men who supported us because, again, our takes were not attacking people. It was just speaking about topics that maybe you might hear in your head or you might speak amongst a small group of people. But because you're now saying it publicly, you're saying things people want to say but might be too scared to say, as we've discussed. So, of course, with that, it's led to us a lot of success that now we've had a lot of celebrities on our podcast, if anything. They want to come because they see the conversations are very organic and authentic. So that's what's made us stand out. And it's like they said, if you're able to do something against the normal trend in Nigeria and do it right, you're able to see a lot of success from it.
Now, Stas, where do we draw the line between free speech, between saying things that are controversial to trend, between canceling people, coming at them, and totally because when you see some of this either canceling or bullying, whatever you want to call it, it goes beyond the personality. It goes to the person's family, the person's art, the person's work, the person's entirety. And it's almost like we're going to decimate this person and whatever this person stands for. Not always, looking at the cost it has on other people that are affected. So where do we draw that line between what is free and fair in terms of speech and the things that are being said to cancel someone or to trend?
I mean, there's a popular wave now where it's almost cool to kind of be vile. It's almost like people get points for being we want to see who's the meanest, who can say the meanest things, or who can, and people kind of derive some sort of enjoyment, pleasure, or just some online clout from it. Now, there's also the part where people know that certain things will trigger this backlash. And so they actually go ahead to do it because at the end of the day, it's numbers for them. So that it's two sides to one coin. It's like there's one hand where people just jump on these things. If you say something that we don't want to hear, then we also come at you in droves but there's also the part where people are going to be like, you know what, I know that this is going to trigger you, so I'm going to do it anyway. And then the more that you talk, the more numbers I have. And at the end of the day, you're lining my pockets. So, but there's also that part where we all just want to caution each other and just be like, at the end of the day now, it all boils down to morality and how you are as a person. Do you really want to be that person who's always going after people?
Who's antagonizing, who's trending at the expense of other people?
Or, do you want to just be your own person and live and let live?
We have Edwin back now, so I'd like you to finish up your thoughts. You were looking at Tony Abraham, Mohbad, Naira Marley. Would like you to continue that.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So as I was saying, Tony Abraham is a very different subject matter because she is a public personality, number one. Number two, she wields considerable influence. And number three, she has a fan base who follow her because they believe that they share the same values with her. And I think a lot of the backlash that she has been getting over the last couple of months is because they believe that she has betrayed the values that they thought they shared with her. And they're trying to let her know. Of course, people on the internet can be very aggressive because they feel that there is no repercussions. Everything is online and they can log off after and not really face the consequences of their actions. But I think that there needs to be some level of restraint and caution when people try to correct public personalities for making personal choices.
Thank you, Edwin. Now, I'll move to you, Michael. Should there be repercussions? I mean, we're on TV now. There is a code. There are certain things I can't say. There are certain things you can't say. No matter how much you want to trend or want to follow the bandwagon, should we have a code for engagement on social media that mitigates these kind of issues with cancel culture? And for the people who are found wanting, should they be punished? Should maybe the owners of platforms like X, formerly Twitter, find ways to totally ban them? I mean, we have a case of the former president, Donald Trump, that can't have an account on X, for example. Should we begin to see such measures?
It's very tricky when you ask that question because you still want to give people free speech to express themselves. But if it becomes a case that is starting to harm others in terms of the literal sense, whereby people are spewing out hate messages and people are acting on those hate messages, attacking people or so, that's when you need to take action with it. Like, for example, Donald Trump's case, it became a case that citizens were starting to take action because of the things he said. So that on its own is a right for you to close it. But then if it's something that somebody is just saying something controversial and all, you have to give people the freedom of speech at the same time. So I feel that the court of public opinion does actually matter, because if it's a case that's so extreme, the people will come together and speak about it so much that actions need to take place. So for example, with Donald Trump, people came together that an action took place. With Naira Marley, people came together that an action took place. But if it's something not that major, then allow people to express themselves. But you yourself now have to have a clear understanding of what you're taking in with social media. That's one thing that people don't like to do, take accountability in terms of the things you're watching, the things you're reading. How much of it are you taking it in every day?
Osas, as a media editor, how important is it to you to portray some of the maybe less popular opinions out there, even when it doesn't come with the commensurate numbers? Where do you have that conscience on what to push out, what to shine the light on, knowing the impact it might have on others and the people who are in question, but also managing the business sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, thankfully, where I started my career majorly, in the media is one very positive, space. It's one of the major policies where there's no promotion of hate, wherever anything that is coming from this platform, is it has to be positive. And even if it's a negative thing, there's always a positive spin on it. And so that has kind of like also seeped into my, personal boundaries as regards the kind of things that you want to platform, or because at the end of the day, a lot of these things rest on us. I feel like the media platforms have to be responsible, yes, we want the money, yes, you want the numbers, but there are other ways to get the money and get the numbers without actually decimating other people, So, and at the end of the day, there's also the part where, like you said, people have to, take accountability. If you're coming online, you already have to accept that not everybody's going to agree with what I'm going to say. Not everybody is going to agree with whatever opinions that I have, just the same way I have the right to air my opinion. Someone else has the right to say, I don't think that, this one is something to take, at the end of the day. So we all have that responsibility where it's like, if you're going to be doing anything at all and you're going to be airing it, you have to be conscious and know that, it could go either way and, be ready for whatever it is. But also as media platforms, you have to have that responsibility to make sure that you're not contributing, because the media has a lot of... Yeah,
it's called the fourth estate. They're gatekeepers.
Exactly. Yes. They have a lot of hand in a lot of these things. So if we're not promoting hate, if we're not promoting bile, if you're leading. We can set the tone.
And you can also kill certain stories. You can actually, put out some fires.
Yeah. So
I'd like to get Edwin's thoughts on this. Do you feel, in a case where self-censorship, like Osasa said, fails, that maybe the government needs to step in to start censoring what is happening on the social space, the same way, like, we can't just do anything we want on television, on radio, because there are fines to be paid when you go against the code? Is that where we should be looking at if we want to really tackle hate speech, cancel culture, online bullying?
The word social media has media in it, and one of the jobs of the media is to platform different opinions. I do think that government interference is a net negative for social media, because the government their primary focus is preserving the status quo, and often it takes the citizens to push against certain things for change to happen. Censorship will not only affect the trolls, it will affect the oppressed, the marginalized, people who do not have a voice anywhere else. Social media has been very influential in platforming a number of prominent Nigerian causes, including sexual violence, rape, police brutality. People had tried traditional media to get those stories out, but those stories were censored because of the insane amount of censorship that traditional media endures. Having the government interfere in social media will bring that kind of censorship here and will silence a lot of marginalized people who have found a voice, who have found agency, who have found power through social media. So I would say, and just to mention, there is already regulation on social media, but the social media platforms push against that regulation because they understand the power that they have and the position that they occupy in public discourse.
Listening to you, Edwin, it just reminded me of the time when X, or formerly Twitter, was down for months, and we also saw the repercussions that had. Some people make their money from being influencers or having engagement, and now they actually pay creators in Nigeria. So, it also begs the question of what people are doing now that there's even more opportunities to monetize. And I think what Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie said, where there's a lot of posturing, whether it's clout chasing, whether it's trying to out-angel the other. One just hopes that with that free platform that people are allowed to be themselves, and people can actually express their voices. Michael, do you share the same thoughts with Edwin when it comes to censorship and government involvement? In a few seconds.
Recently, I've seen the government has tried to get involved in some things. For example, with content creators, I saw recently they wanted to jump in on that. But I also feel that the government should take its time in actually understanding the internet in terms of content creation, social media, the business behind it. Because like you said, a lot of people now have found new streams of revenue from it. I'm one of those people that used to have a professional background before, but switched to content creation that pays me a lot more. And because you have access to the whole world, it also brings a good light if you're doing the content right to your country. So for example, now you see how Nigeria, outside of Afrobeats music, the content that we create in Nigeria is spreading around the world. That's bringing a lot more tourism in the country because we are the ones that are showcasing the country in a unique light. So I feel that, of course, like they said, there should be some kind of control from the government, but I feel that we need to educate ourselves first on the business of it and also how people are conducting themselves on it before we start to make final decisions.
Thank you very much, Michael Shonariwo. Thank you, Osasa Konya.
Thank you.
Osasa. Thank you very much, Edwin Okolo, for joining us on Rubbin Minds.
Don't just stand there teasing me. Now